Good evening and welcome to the October 9th meeting of the Parks and Community Services Commission. I call this meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Vice Chair Wright, would you lead us in the pledge?
Yes, please stand.
Thank you so much. Ms. Fatua, the roll call, please.
Let the record reflect all commissioners are present except for Commissioner Garcia Arcos.
Great. And now the floor is open for public comments on matters not listed on the agenda. Is there anyone in the chambers who would like to make a public comment?
Chair Brown, I would like to state we did receive correspondence tonight as well.
Thank you. Let me turn your mic on. Mr. Garcia.
Hi, good evening, commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Matt Garcia, Costa Mesa resident and Harbor Soaring Society president. I'd just like to invite all of you out to the flying field this weekend. HSS has a flight day at Fairview Park, and I think October 30th or sometime in the near future, the Fairview Park Master Plan is coming up on your agenda. So we'd greatly appreciate it if you came out and visited the field. Thank you to the commissioners. Thank you to everyone that has come out and visited us. If you don't have time to make it out there on a Saturday, we're flying this Saturday and the following Saturday. It's the second and third Saturday of the month, this month, from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. If you don't have time to make it out to the field, you can always check our YouTube page. It gives you a good sense of what the activity's like and kind of what we do. And you just go to YouTube, search Harbor Soaring Society, and you'll see lots of videos from the last few years. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comments, Ms. Fatua, is there anyone on Zoom?
Yes. Charlene Ashendorf, you may now speak. Charlene?
Okay.
Charlene, we can't hear you.
Commissioner Ashendorf, if you would like to hang up and maybe try back, we could go to commissioner comments and then come back to public comment. Let's try that. Okay. We will go to commissioner comments, and then if she's joined us again, we will take public comment then. Why don't we begin with Commissioner Houston? Would you like to go first?
Hi, everybody. Not too much to report. Just looking forward to a good meeting today. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Dorn Parker.
Put my mic on. Thank you. I just have two quick items. One is I appreciated on September 20th, I wandered over to Fairview Park and saw the work of the Soaring Society, and also who was there was setting up was a Coastal Corridor Alliance, and so it was really good for me to understand both, and I really appreciate the work of both of them. The most amazing opportunity I saw was the Coastal Alliance people showed me this little, what I considered compared to the huge acreage of the park, this triangle where they were doing restoration just 6 months ago, and how very quickly the native plants have filled in and taken over. So it's hard when I see the volunteers work, weekend after weekend, and it's hard to think that they're they're mattering or in a way, but it showed how quickly our native plants can overtake back into the space. So that was really exciting. The other thing I want to acknowledge the staff. There was walk to school Wednesday, I think it was Tuesday, Wednesday, and I forgot about it. I heard like it sounded like this beehive of humming and talking, and I go out to my front porch and there's just everyone walking because we're right by Kaiser School. And I have to say, yay to the park ranger that was behind making sure everybody was safe and making sure that that walk to school was amazing. So congratulations. It was great. I know that's part of what we do in the city, but it's a really important event. And I think afterwards, quite a few families continue to walk to school or bike to school. So that's it for me.
Commissioner Kamala.
Hey everyone. Just want to say thank you to everyone who's involved in the draft of the master plan. And I know it feels like it took a while to get there, but as you go through all the information, you'll realize that there was a lot of thought put into it. If you haven't had a chance to do so, you can go to the city's website, review the draft master plan yourself. I'd encourage you to also look at Appendix A, B, C, and D. It covered outreach documents, biological resource technical reports, vegetation map, cultural tribal resources, and I believe there's also still a link to Measure AA that you could review. So a lot of information there. And then again with Fairview Park, there's a second Saturday restoration. Obviously this Saturday, October 11th, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And throughout the month of October, there's several restoration and volunteer opportunities available at Fairview Park. Fairview Park Steering Committee will also be having a review session on October 15th from 6 to 8 p.m. I encourage everyone to review the draft plan. Would love to hear comments and feedback, and that's what I got.
Thank you. Commissioner Ledger.
Thank you. So I attended the Hispanic Heritage Month celebration at Lions Park, and it was absolutely beautiful. And I wanted to say that for those that did not go to fourth grade in California, you wouldn't understand the history of the missions in California and how Hispanic heritage is also California heritage. So if you did not go to school in California in the fourth grade, you really should look into our history with the missions to understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Wright.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. Looking forward to the agenda items today. A highlight of my month was the Art Venture event. Always love events at Lions Park and Norma Herzog. And otherwise, I'll save the rest of my comments for the meeting. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Just one note I'd like to make is that next Wednesday there will be a meeting on homelessness solutions held by the city. Director Gruder, I don't know if you have more information. I believe it's from 5:30 to 7 at the Norma Herzog Community Center. Just want to point out that that's something that commissioners might want to consider attending as well, and its relationship to parks in the city of Costa Mesa. And the last thing I would say is just a shameless plug for an event that's happening this Saturday. October is one of the best months. There's so many great events. It's exhausting, and so many great events competing with one another. So I know that there's a Scarecrow Festival happening this Saturday. There's also a festival called the Earthrise Climate Action Festival, and it's the culmination of a 2-year grant that I've actually been a part of as part of my work with the University of California. But it's going to be a lot of interfaith conversations, beekeeping demonstrations, cooking demonstrations, a youth activist panel, a lot of different things happening. So our city councilwoman, Arliss Reynolds, will be moderating a conversation that evening. There will be live poetry. So if anyone is interested in attending, I would just recommend checking out Harbor Christian Church on their website, and you can find out more details. I think that is it for commissioner comments. Ms. Fatua, has Charlene Aschendorf joined us again?
We can try again. Charlene, you are on mute. We can hear you now.
How's this?
It's great.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair Brown. I appreciate it. Commissioners, my name is Charlene Aschendorf, resident of Costa Mesa. I have some Parks Commission experience, but I'm talking to you today about poetry in the parks. And I know you might hear about this event later today in staff report, or it's also in our Spotlight magazine, but let me just share how you can explore poetry throughout the city the rest of this month. Parks and the Art of Poetry find 5 kiosks around our city. Here's a place where you should start. You will find folks who are young at heart. Trails and birds and sunset views, a QR code is in store for you. A long, deep valley where you'll walk or ride, a poem is hidden if you step inside. Looking for poetry in District 1, new pickleball courts. That park is fun. So let's end our hunt where dogs are king. So poetry and pooches, if that's your thing. So I invite you to begin, visit our parks, take your cell phone, hit the QR code. The poems that you will be connected to are written by our inaugural poet laureate, Daniel Hansen. She will guide you through some exercises. And there's also an opportunity to win prizes for community members who visit all the kiosks and participate in poetry in the parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, moving on to the consent calendar.
I was just going to say, I see no other hands raised.
Thank you, Ms. Fatua. Before we vote on this, I wanted to check in and see if there was any public comment on anything related to the consent calendar. I would just like to thank city staff for making the updates to the minutes. I really appreciate how thorough they are, and feel like our voices were well represented. So thank you. Do we want to does someone want to make a motion?
There we go.
Thank you.
Okay.
You may vote on your dais. Motion carries 6-0 to approve consent calendar items.
Thank you. Monthly reports. Director Gruner, the Parks and Community Services Director's update.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, Commissioners and the community as well. Just waiting for my presentation to get pulled up. There we go. All right, so first off, I just want to mention that I had the opportunity to go to the California League of the California Cities conference up in Long Beach today, and it was just a really great event. It's the first time that I went, and they had some really great sessions, on different topics from housing to legal issues. So I went to a couple of sessions. I just want to share that with you and the community real quick. The first session I went to is how cities are centralizing communication to boost community engagement, and really what I got out of it was, website and social media needs to be accessible and easy to use. A lot of times you go on a website and you're searching, and you just can't find what you're looking for. And, so of course, a lot of us have, experienced that, and I think that, I will definitely try to make some improvements in regards to, or advocate for making some improvements on our website, because even sometimes I have a hard time finding things. I'm like, okay, this needs to be worked on or, improved. Also calendar sharing with other departments in the community, having one centralized calendar where all the events are on there. It gives a high-level overview of the time, date, location, and then, a lot of times there's a link you can click on, and then it will give you more information if you need it. So just small little improvements. I thought that was really great to be a part of. And my second session is building youth-centered cities. And this doesn't focus on programming. I think that's a lot of the discussions is programming. What programs can we do? Well, this focused more on policy, and I found it really interesting that some cities actually have developed a youth bill of rights, and that was council adopted, and it basically outlines the bill of rights for youth in that particular city, which I thought was very interesting. And then also funding through development fees, making sure there's a constant stream of funding coming through that will help the programmatic side of things, but also providing more civic inclusion and getting more of the community together. So I thought that was pretty interesting as well, and I just want to share that with you guys. Definitely a lot of information. I'm certainly going to, go back and go through it again and see what else I can learn out of it. Speaking of Fairview Park from earlier, so the Fairview Park Master Plan draft was released last Friday, October 3rd, and we're having a special Fairview Park Steering Committee meeting on next Wednesday on October 15th. So we certainly want the public to come out and be a part of that, and then we're going to have the special meeting here with the PACS Commission on October 30th. Again, we're going to have a presentation by our Fairview Park administrator as well as the consultant from MIG who was part of it. So really, try to answer everybody's questions and really dive into the master plan draft. And then we're looking to go to council on November 18th. And so obviously if you have an interest in that, then please come on out for that and participate. We do want to try to maximize our outreach, so we're doing some additional community engagement. One is going to be this weekend, the Scarecrow Fest, and that's going to be over at Lions Park, so that's October 11th, and that's from 2 to 6. And then we're going to be out in Fairview Park on October 21st, as well as October 29th. So we're going to be either in the morning on the 21st and later in the evening or late afternoon on the 29th. Again, we just want to really make sure that we engage as much as we can with the community and try to get as much feedback and input as possible. All right, come on. So just a couple of upcoming events. As I mentioned earlier, Scarecrow Fest is going to be this Saturday from 2 p.m. until 6 p.m. over at Lions Park event lawn. And it's just a great event, seeing all the little kids coming out with their costumes, and we'll have different activities and things that they can do, pumpkin decorating, we're going to have the costume parade, scarecrow contest, music, games, and so much more. And it's just great for the kids to come out. I always liked seeing the little ones with their cute little costumes and running around and just having a great time. Also want to highlight the Wicked Dance is coming up, and that's going to be October 17th from 5:30 to 7:30, and that's going to be at the Senior Center. So that's our All Abilities event, where we certainly invite everybody to come out, for those that want to partake in that. And I've mentioned this before, but this program has really been kind of growing over the last years. I believe last year we had 70 kids coming out for this, and it was just a really great event, and I'm hoping that we're going to get more and more as the word gets out. So again, that's going to be October 17th from 5:30 to 7:30. At the Senior Center. And I do, speaking of poetry in the park, we're going to show a quick video, and we actually have one of our star cast members here. It's a really great video that we put together with our social media and marketing team upstairs on the 5th floor, the manager's office, and it really kind of highlights the entire program and
explore our parks and have the opportunity to win free tickets to a show at the Segerstrom campus?
Yes, we just launched the Poetry in the Parks Challenge.
Poet laureate Danielle Hansen has hidden poems in kiosks at 5 different parks across the city. Head to each park, find the kiosk, and scan the QR code.
That'll take you to an exclusive page with a poem, fun activity, and a form to log your visit. Each park you log your visit for is one entry to win free tickets to a show at the Segerstrom Center campus. That's up to 5 chances to win.
So what are you waiting for?
You're right. Let's go to the parks. Let the poetry adventure begin.
So they did a really great job, I think, with that reel. So please participate in that program as well. And that concludes my presentation for this evening. Thank you.
Why don't we start with Commissioner comments and questions, and then I can open it up for public comment. Commissioner Ledger.
So I actually love the idea of the Youth Bill of Rights, and we could actually turn that into maybe a contest with the high schools where they could have the students submit a Bill of Rights that we could borrow from. We don't have to use, one, but like we could have a winner like first, second, third place. They could win things like fair tickets or something. But that would be a good a good learning thing for the government classes of the high schools. That's all.
For the additional community engagement events for the master plan, is there like a questionnaire we're looking for, just general feedback, just sharing information?
Just sharing information, general feedback. We do encourage people to email us if they have, particular recommendations that they want to see, but we're going to be out there answering basic questions. We do want to encourage them to come to the meetings where we're going to have the consultant here that can really kind of, go a little bit deeper into the details of the master plan draft. So it's more informational and just making sure that people know that the draft is out, that they can review it, provide feedback and input, and then we can take that back to the council.
My mic is not happy with me. Vice Chair Wright, do you have questions, comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I've been noticing we've been doing community input opportunities in like small businesses or like new places around the city. I think I saw an ice cream one and then one at Neat, and I think that's amazing. I've also noticed how great the Instagram has been looking. So I'm glad that you're like yourself educating yourself on like communication and stuff, because I think that's so important for engaging with normal people, is all these channels. And one thing that you said about calendar sharing, even with all of our, and like simplifying our website, even making sure that we're sort of the central place where people can find out about what's going on at the school district too, or with our other special districts. I think a common misunderstanding, which I totally think is valid, is that people think all of that is just through the city. So they go to us for information on everything. So yeah, great to hear good things happening. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for bearing with me. My computer screen is acting up. I think it's working now, but it's a little funky. I love hearing about the Bill of Rights, the Youth Bill of Rights, and it reminded me of something that Arliss worked with a teen in the area to develop a youth advisory council plan. And so that would be something perhaps to connect with Councilmember Reynolds to see where that is at. I could imagine that a council would be a great way to begin to get youth involved in various aspects of government, and they would be great stakeholders to actually consult at the front lines in terms of a Bill of Rights. So just wanted to mention that. I have some questions about the Fairview Park Master Plan community engagement, because I can foresee that community engagement at places like the park might be a little bit easier, but going to the Scarecrow Festival, for example, I would imagine necessitates an interaction where we're talking through some of the things that the master plan includes. I am concerned that having such a lengthy document will be something that's hard to digest for many in our community. It's a commitment. And so I know in sometimes government will do, like a 2-pager or something like that, which gives you something to be able to hook you, and then you can go and read more about it. So I guess that would be one question, which is, are we providing any other kinds of documentation around this? And I see head nodding. So do you want to weigh in first?
Yeah.
Okay.
So on the city website, if you do costamesa.gov/FVPMP, there is a 1-pager specifying what a master plan is and what it does, kind of like the who, what, when, where, on the web page for the master plan.
But not specifically in terms of what's in the content of this master plan. And my apologies that I don't know this, but it is recently released. Just putting that out there, that we might, as we're thinking about what does community engagement really means, it's one thing to go out and say, we see you, community, and we want you to be involved, but it's also a kind of high bar to expect people to read a document of this length. And I'm also wondering, in terms of translation, is this document in how many other languages for our community?
Currently, it's just in English, basically, at this time. But yeah, we can certainly look into other languages.
In my district, that doesn't cover about a third of my district, and I'm in District 5, so I'm just thinking about what that means for District 4. So the language is another, it makes me question, like, what do we mean by public engagement? It means certain publics get to engage in certain ways. So just putting that out there. The questions I have are, when we're asking for feedback, what's on the table and what's not on the table? Right, so let's say I get through, I personally will get through this, but let's say me, citizen out in the community, I read it, I make this investment. Could you give us a sense of, like, are there parts of this master plan that it's like, I shouldn't even bother, like, thinking through, right? Because it's already been decided, or there are certain contractual obligations. And then there are parts where it's like, actually, we really genuinely want to know what people think about that. And I'm not even looking for something comprehensive, but a sense of, like, there's this and this and this and this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it is a draft. So it's not obviously approved in any shape, way, or form. So we're always open to having some input and feedback and recommendations from the commission that we can obviously share with the council as well. So yeah, there's really nothing. Unless it's some type of environmentally restricted area where we can't really do much because it's California Fish and Wildlife, they have certain guidelines that we have to adhere to. Then we can't really do much of anything. But if it's something that's related to the open space, like the open grass area, then sure, we're open to suggestions and recommendations.
Thank you. I think that's it for my questions and comments. Is there anyone in the chambers who would like to provide public comment on the director's report? Ms. Fatua, is there anyone on Zoom?
I see no hands raised at this time.
Okay, thank you. Director Gruner, are you the lead on the Public Works Services update as well?
That's going to be coming from our economic development folks, and we have Anna here, who's going to be going through the presentation on the Fairview Development Center project.
And I think I got ahead of myself.
I would like to notate that we will not have one today at this time for the public services update.
Okay, thank you. So that there's no monthly report for number 2. Got it. Okay, so now we are moving on to new business. Welcome. This is on the Fairview Developmental Center specific plan status update. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Commission. My name is Anna McGill. I'm the planning manager for the advanced planning team here at the City of Costa Mesa. Tonight, I'm going to give you an update on the Fairview Development Center specific plan. And because of the purview of this commission, I'm really going to try to focus on the open space components of that specific plan. So with that said, bear with me, I haven't used this before. Okay, there we go. First, I'm going to go through the history of the FDC property and the timeline, just giving you some background on how we actually got to the point where we are today. It's quite a complex site. It's owned by the state, and there are state functions on the site too. So we've really had a sort of unique and complex partnership, and that's obviously defined our specific plan. I'm then going to go through the components. Sorry, I'm getting a little feedback here. The components on the specific plan and the open space requirements, what we envision for the specific plan and where we're pulling those requirements from. And then I'll go through our Planning Commission recommendations. So we've had 3 study sessions with them over the summer. They've given their recommendation to the City Council. We anticipate going to the City Council on the 21st of October. I don't anticipate that you've had watched all of those videos, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a summary of some of the things that were discussed. And then we'll go through next steps for our process and when we anticipate coming back to this commission for your input. So just to start with the project background, so the Fairview Development Center is state-owned and operated a facility that opened in 1959. It homed several residents that ranged in age and also varying developmental disabilities that the state provided care and services to. As of 2021, the FDC no longer provides care on site. But it is what we call a warm shutdown today. So that means that the facility is maintained and it has a license to temporarily house emergent cases until a more a more permanent situation is found for a resident. So that's how it operates today. And there are some office uses that are associated with providing those services on the site too. There's quite a bit of legislative history on the site too. So giving you kind of the more recent history, in 2015, a Senate bill allowed for 20 acres of the site for those with developmental disabilities and needing more support and care. Those services are provided by the Department of Developmental Services, or DDS. And so you'll see they're going to be part of our specific plan area, and their portion of housing will meet the specific plan requirements. So that's the green area you see on the map here. The state then adopted an FDC closure plan in 2016 to kind of kick and start this process. There were a couple of interim uses that were contemplated between 2019 and 2020, a homelessness shelter on the site, as well as a potential quarantine site for COVID. Those temporary uses were never realized and never moved forward. In 2022, the Senate Bill 188 really was what kickstarted our ability to start a specific plan process and allowed the city to lead the planning effort and then allow for the disposition of this property. So eventually the state will be selling the property to a master developer to then submit entitlements and show us how they meet our specific plan. In 2023, the Department of Developmental Services also authorized a bill to construct 3 complex needs homes. That's actually under construction right now, and it's in the hashed red area on the map that's along Merrimack Way. So you can see that there. The Department of General Services, so another state entity, not the same state entities, think of them as cousins, moved forward and pursued a 15-acre emergency operations center. That's in the blue area on the map. And at the same time, the city started kicking off their specific plan and EIR, environmental impact report process. In 2026, the state expects to initiate selection of a master developer, and they'll do that through a request for proposals or bid process and ultimately pick a developer. So what that leaves us with is the portions in blue here. So the DDS housing above the blue portion, and the blue portion is what is going to be encompassed in this specific plan. But what a master developer really has to work with and submit an application for is what is highlighted in blue. And you'll see that there is this black dot in the EOC, that's an emergency communications tower. And so there are going to be height restrictions in the specific plan to ensure that that tower can still communicate to other towers in the case of emergency. And so our specific plan will need to abide by those restrictions as well. So here's kind of where we are in the timeline. We've done a lot since we kicked off our specific plan, and before that, the city and state, established a partnership in 2022. We then executed an agreement with the state in order to start the specific plan process in 2023. We hired a consultant, PlaceWorks, to help go through the outreach and write the specific plan, so they're assisting us in that process. We've held a lot of community outreach through 4 community workshops. That included over 18 public outreach meetings. Between that, city council study sessions, planning commission study sessions, pop-ups, maintaining a project website. All of those meetings were conducted in Spanish and English. We had a survey for land use concepts to get feedback and got over 719 responses. Probably unsurprising to this commission as it relates to open space, the response and feedback and input that we got on open space was that, first of all, there's an incredible need and demand for it in our city, and this is a good location to have those publicly accessible open space amenities, and really the desire to have a range of different open space, both passive and active. And so I'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation too. And to make sure that they're dispersed throughout the plan and that they're accessible for residents in the plan and outside. And so that is what we will be taking into account and thinking of as we start to draft our specific plan. Really quickly on what a specific plan is, it's a land use tool that establishes regulations. It'll show a land use plan, it'll have development standards and design direction, a circulation plan, an infrastructure plan, and a plan for phasing and financing, because we typically expect a project of this size to be built out in a 15 to 20-year horizon. The Fairview Developmental Center specific plan, it's going to be the basis for future application on the site, and so the developer who's ultimately picked by the state is going to be required to comply with that specific plan that's adopted. So moving into open space, there's a couple of things that are sort of informing the regulations that will ultimately get put into the specific plan. So one is the Quimby Act, which establishes 3 acres per 1,000 residents. There's also a city general plan policy in the land use element in mixed use corridor designation that identifies 25% of FDC to be open space. And then a city general plan policy of 4.26 acres per 1,000 residents. And that requirement is actually the bigger requirement of all 3 of them. That is what the Planning Commission has recommended that the city move forward with and include into the specific plan. So that's our intent. And we intend to write in some flexibility there because that requirement is really for open space. But what we anticipate the master developer will do is meet that requirement through a combination of providing space on actual dedication of accessible parkland space, doing actual improvements to that. So there's a value and a cost associated with those improvements, like sports facilities, parks, different types of amenities, and then payment of impact and in lieu fees. And those could be used citywide for improvements or land acquisitions in line with your parks master plan. And then in addition to the publicly accessible open space, the developer will be required to provide private open space for residential units. So think like courtyards, private yards, balcony space, swimming pools, that kind of thing that are accessible for residents in the building. The Planning Commission recommended a minimum for environmental review purposes of 2,300 units and up to studying 4,000 units. I'll talk a little bit about that later in the presentation. But one of the things that we identified early on in this process is that building any more than 2,300 units requires a secondary access route into the site for safety, emergency and safety. And so it will have to go through the golf course. There's really no other way that we can have a secondary access. And so that's something that we're going to study as part of our environmental review. And in addition to that, the city hired an architect, specific golf architect, to look at the impacts to the golf course and identify how the golf course could be reconfigured to accommodate that secondary road. We've identified that 6 holes would be impacted, and they're starting to look through options to redesign those holes in order to keep, excuse me because I'm not a golf player, but the overall playability really, and keep the sort of par level. And so we've been coordinating internally with staff and with the golf course operator to try to find ways to mitigate the impact of that secondary road. Those are off-site improvements, but though related to FDC, they'll be included in the project description so that we can study them for an environmental aspect. Okay, moving on to the Planning Commission recommendation. So as we were developing land use concepts, we developed preferred alternatives. They were vetted internally with staff across multiple divisions and departments, and then ultimately they were shared with the Planning Commission over 3 study sessions over this summer. Here are some of the things that were discussed. The financial feasibility to test different housing unit thresholds, land distribution, circulation network, open space, and just the overall organization of the 80-acre site. And so you can see here in these pictures, there's a couple of different combinations of where open space might be and housing and some of the circulation network into the specific plan. And you can even see a couple of different options for that secondary road access. So this is ultimately what the Planning Commission recommended, and I'm going to look over here because my screen just went off. So they recommended studying for environmental purposes. Oh, I'll pause then. Yeah, yeah, my screen's like one behind for some reason, but I'll look over here till it catches up. So this was, oh, I need to go back one more. Oh, there we are. So this is what the Planning Commission recommended.
1 second. So this is the one, it's acting up. Do you guys see it? You're good? Okay, thank you.
Okay, perfect. This is what the Planning Commission recommended for environmental study purposes, and that's so that we can understand what the potential environmental impacts of the project would be. So a minimum of 2,300 units, a maximum of 4,000 units. I've listed the affordable housing units here and what those requirements will be, but for environmental purposes, a house is a house, no matter if it's market rate or affordable. Up to 35,000 square feet of commercial space and a minimum of 12 acres of dedicated publicly accessible open space. So like I said before, that requirement that I noted would still be there in the specific plan, but this helps us sort of analyze and estimate like a worst case scenario. From an environmental standpoint, housing has more of an environmental impact than open space does. And so that's why the number is at least listed here as a minimum to study. And then the Planning Commission recommended setting up to 3 points of access if needed to alleviate potential traffic impacts. Again, I talked about the minimum of 12 acres of a flexible open space. There's no maximum to that, so a developer can do as much as they want and they're willing to, and they can meet that requirement through dedicated open space, improvements and impact and in lieu fees. And these are the kind of active and passive uses that we anticipate being in the specific plan. And those are listed here in the table. And in addition to that, I have identified in the plan some paseos, a connected trail around the site, and so those will be included as part of the publicly accessible open space. So in terms of next steps, just going back here, we're at the point where we're selecting a preferred plan, and that's what we'll ask the City Council to do on October 21st. That will help us get a project description to start our environmental review. We then anticipate returning back to this commission during the public review and comment period for the draft specific plan, and at that point we would be soliciting input on the open plan requirements within the specific plan. And so with that, this is the status update. That's the staff recommendation. That concludes the staff presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Sorry, my mic is still not working very well. Thank you so much for that presentation. I think what I'd like to do is open this up for public comment first, in case there are people who have come to comment on this, and then we can take commissioner questions and comments, if that sounds good. Is there anyone in the chambers who would like to provide public comment on this agenda item? Ma'am, please come forward. I will turn the mic on, and if you would like to introduce yourself, please do so, and give us your public comment.
Hi, my name's Ann McElligott, and I am an active volunteer with AYSO in Costa Mesa, and just really want to encourage you to keep pushing the availability of fields for all uses, for all kids, for all players. I don't know if you've noticed, but Newport Mesa School District now has programs going on at many of their sites till 6 o'clock, so they kind of don't even want us on their fields because we're interfering with their programs. And then they also recently changed their program so that instead of going till 9 o'clock, we have to be off the fields at 8 o'clock. So that's for all user groups, you know, not just AYSO. So it's really put a crunch on fields like Jack Hammett. I mean, it seems like as a city, we really have to start pushing the fact that we have city-controlled fields so that we can accommodate the youth and the adults. We really don't have fields for adults to play any sports. You know, we have tennis and we have baseball, but any other kind of sports, it's kind of hard for adults to get on the soccer field. So I'm just here to encourage you to, you know, whenever we're looking at new projects, to really look at the availability of open space, and let's make a real plan to have city-controlled fields so that we can accommodate, you know, everybody, you know, in our city. And that's about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the chambers who would like to make a public comment? Seeing none, Ms. Fatua, are there people online who would like to make a comment?
Yes, I have one hand raised. Two, actually. Cynthia McDonald, you may now speak.
Good evening, Commissioners. Earlier today, I sent you an email which included a video link. I hope you had a chance to review that, as it provides important context for what I'm about to share with you. Last week, I attended a meeting at City Hall where someone asked, "What makes Costa Mesa special?" My response was simple: opportunity. Costa Mesa is a city full of potential. And one of the most significant opportunities we've seen in years is the future of the Fairview Developmental Center site. Fairview represents a rare chance to create something meaningful, not just housing, but vital open space and parkland for our community. And unfortunately, that vision is being diminished. The general plan envisioned 22 acres of open space for the site. However, another section of the general plan actually recommends closer to 45 acres. And under the Quimby Act, that number would be around 31 acres. Yet today, that number has been reduced to a mere 12 acres. That does not conform to the general plan. To put this in perspective, neighboring Santa Ana has recently approved 2 projects that offer significantly more open space. Costa Mesa, by comparison, is falling short. And while this is a worst-case scenario, the environmental impact report gives a developer the right to move forward with the permissions granted in that report. Therefore, it's important to create as much open space now. If you haven't already, I strongly encourage you to listen to the public comments from the recent Planning Commission meetings. Our residents shared thoughtful, informed concerns, many expressing deep disappointment over the lack of open space in the current plan. Now is the time to speak up. I urge you to share your thoughts with the City Council and advocate for a plan that prioritizes open space, transparency, and meaningful public input. This is our opportunity to shape the future of Costa Mesa in a way that reflects the values and the needs of our community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Ms. Fatua, are there other comments?
Natalie King, you may unmute and now speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, everybody. This is my first time actually making a comment. I'm a resident of Costa Mesa, 41 years. My grandmother used to go to all of these meetings all the time. They purchased a house in the 1950s in Costa Mesa. So I have been here I'm 3rd generation now. And I would just like to urge you guys to go out on a Friday night to Jack Hammett and also on a Saturday for AYSO. My daughter actually plays flag football, and my daughter also plays AYSO soccer for Region 120. It has been getting out of control with the amount of residents now living in in Costa Mesa. We don't have adequate parking for these facilities. And like Ann had just mentioned earlier, we are running out of space and we don't have a lot of open space for our youth. We've lost a lot. I mean, we used to have the ice capades when I was a kid, a bowling alley, and it just seems like all we keep doing is building more and more homes and leaving the open space out. So I just urge you guys to go over to the fields on a Friday night, look at the lack of parking. We can't utilize Costa Mesa High School anymore. We now just got asked to pay for permit parking to use OCC's back parking lot between the baseball field and the track and field at OCC. So now people that are in recreational sports are now having to pretty much pay a permit to go watch their kids play sports on a Friday and a Saturday at a city-owned field, which used to be the farm when I was a kid. So I just really urge you guys to look at this. I also wanted to add, I know I'm running out of time, I wanted to add that I have attended all of the Fairview Development Center meetings. And I just wanted to let you guys know that I've definitely put my input in on a sports complex. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Fatua, is there anyone else online?
I see no other hands raised.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I'm going to close public comment. Commissioners, now is our opportunity to ask questions, make comments. Commissioner Kamala.
First, I'd like to thank Ann for coming out, and I have been out to Jack Hammett a lot, and in fact, I agree with the parking situation. Someone backed into my truck actually 2 weeks ago on the way out. My wife's one of the coaches, and we were trying to figure out what was our practice field on a Thursday, and it was a sliver of a field that didn't look like a field. And so, I applaud you guys for everything you do to maximize that space. But I would agree that open space needs to be a priority on this project. Thank you for that great presentation as well. I think it knocked out 4 of the questions that I had written down on my little paper here. But when looking at the math, I think I looked at the 12-acre requirement, and then the city wants 4.26 acres for every 1,000 residents. So in my head, I thought 2,800 to 2,900 residents, but it looked like the range was up to 4,000 potentially for residential units. With the need for acreage, I know we said that planned amenities would be considered part of that open space. Would all that be within that Fairview Developmental Center, or potentially would the developer be able to say, I'll invest in this other offsite property to improve and maintain that, and would that be considered part of the 12 acres?
Thank you for that question. The specific plan will be written with enough flexibility so that a developer could propose those things in way of meeting the requirement, and then the city would be able to review the application and make the determination of whether we think it's sufficient to meet the requirement. It's a little bit complex because what we're looking at when it comes to amenities is the value of what's being improved and if that's consistent with what the cost would be to dedicate open space. And so if it's off-site, there's a little bit of math and calculation that we have to do to make that comparison and make sure it's consistent with your parks master plan and it's an identified need for the city, and that there's overall community support for it. So there's a couple of different nuances to where we get to the end and say, yes, this is acceptable, but it's something that they could propose.
Okay, yeah, because as I read through it, it seemed like there was definitely flexibility for the developers to do that, which in my head, I thought, what would stop them? I mean, not saying that's good or bad, but investing in development offsite, and then Fairview Development Center ends up being 100% residential, maxing out that 4,000. It's a possibility, correct?
Well, that's why there would be a minimum in the specific plan. So there isn't a way for the developer to go below that minimum, but above that, we could make considerations for. So there wouldn't be a way or a mechanism in the specific plan for them to provide no open space in the site. Okay.
And then looking at the secondary access road through Mesa Linda, it looks like it's going to go through 6 holes. Now, the cost of creating that secondary access road, would that be on the city or would that be on the developer?
The cost of the secondary access road and reconfiguring the golf course would be taken on by the master developer.
And last one, I think, looking at, I've never actually gone into Fairview Development Cell Center, but looking at the map, it looks like that there is obviously the access off of Fair Drive with the big sign, but then it looks like there's already a secondary access through Merrimack, which turns into Gregory Way in the back. Would that not be enough secondary access?
So the state actually owns that land.
Oh.
And they will have access to their DDS development there, but they are not willing to have that be a secondary access for the entire specific plan. They would open it up for emergency situations, but that's it. And so that's why we need to identify another access point for the site.
Okay. I'm not a golfer, but I just thought if we could prevent cutting through the golf course, that might make some people happy. So, okay.
Yeah, it was an early conversation that we had with the state. We were hoping to see a resolution there, but here's where we are.
Cool. Awesome. I think that's all I got. Thanks.
Commissioner Ledger.
So yeah, the road he was talking about, is that the one that goes through Harbor Village? The apartment complex?
You can pull up the presentation. That might be helpful. I can go back to the map.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought. So is that going to be sealed off so that the residents of Harbor Village aren't getting too much through traffic? Because I know I haven't been there in a long time, but I know we used to cut through there as teenagers. So I don't know if it's still accessible, but I wouldn't want this to affect the residents of Harbor Village because they do have a lot of homes for physically disabled people there. So you have a lot of people in wheelchairs and whatnot. So I don't want too much traffic going through there. So I just wanted to know if that's going to be affected.
Yeah, so because the state services folks with developmental disabilities, and for the complex needs homes that are on Merrimack, these are folks with the most severe developmental disabilities that require the most amount of support. And so that's the reason that they really want to limit public access through those spaces. It's a safety concern, and it limits their ability to provide services. However, we're still in conversation with the state on the DDS component that's within the specific plan. They're still thinking about how they want their roadways for those homes to be integrated into the plan. At a minimum, there will be cycling access points and pedestrian access points. So that's something that we're working together with them to achieve. In terms of like vehicle access into the units, typically it'll be reserved only for residents because of the type of clientele that they serve.
Okay, and then based on the public comment, we do need more spaces for activities. One thing I would love to be included in that is a running track, as we are really running out of safe places to run. And this is Southern California, so we should be able to run outside. And I really don't like that people are running on the streets where it's dangerous and not healthy air on the streets. So I would like that considered. And then the trails that was mentioned in there, are those just like sidewalks? Is that what it is? Or walking paths? What is that?
We envision them to be walking paths and only accessible for walkers and cyclists.
Good. Okay. And then is the city working with the school districts to make sure that they are also upgrading their properties to accept any new residents that are going to be moving into these units? Because it does take them a lot longer than, say, we might need to hire more police. It'd be easier to do that than to build mobile classrooms or whatever. So are we working with the school district to make sure that they could support this as well?
In short, yes. Obviously, there's a lot of infrastructure needs that will come from having this many housing units in one space. So we've been having conversations with police, with fire. The school district has asked us to come back to them when we have a preferred plan and a project description. So they're like, without knowing how many units you're moving forward with, it's very difficult for us to give you concrete feedback. So that's the time that they're going to give us a bit more of their input on what their needs are going to be. They've told us so far they don't anticipate needing an additional school site. because of the number of units, but we still have more conversations to have about what needs they will have and what requirements we would embed into the specific plan.
And what about with OCTA? Are we going to increase any bus services in the area?
Yeah, it's the same kind of answer. We've reached out to them, and again, they want to really understand the population and the increase from the number of units before they can really decide what the service needs will be and if there'll be any adjustments.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Dorn Parker.
Yeah, thank you. You answered the question with the school district. And if I heard you right, the development will be anticipated over anywhere from a 10 to 20 year cycle is what you're anticipating.
Yes, that's correct.
And from what I can see, the Planning Commission approved a higher density, so not single family residence. And we're talking about like apartments, condos. Is it going to be sale is what you're thinking, rentals, or ownership?
So the specific plan would be written with flexibility because we don't know who that master developer is going to be. We anticipate that they'll probably do a mix of product typologies, so probably townhomes, multifamily buildings. We know that DDS has a model of supportive housing, 80% supportive housing and 20% moderate rate affordable housing. We anticipate that they're going to still do that same model, and they're going to be like 3-story walk-up apartments. But it will be a range, and we anticipate the master developer will partner with other affordable housing builders. So we have yet to see what that range is going to look like, but the specific plan is going to allow flexibility for it.
So it kind of goes back to a lot of concerns I'm hearing about open space, field space. I mean, that's kind of my background, my bailiwick, you know. And by the way, I have been out to Jack Hammett Field on a Friday night and a Saturday, and it's amazing the use that it receives. So my question is, looking at Jack Hammett, talking about parking issues, I know we're going to try to encourage people to go by bike or whatever, but that's not the reality. How does the Planning Commission or how does the city staff envision this open space? Because if you're planning, you know, active field space, parking, access, there's not enough. So that's my concern of both. Either, you know, have the developer, you know, or the master developer require open space parking somehow that's close to fields, making sure also that all the open space has capacity and will be included with lights. Because one of the issues we have is if you start a field without lights and then realize it's accessing is required to be able to really utilize the fields. We know now lighting is just amazing. We had a presentation, so that shouldn't be a problem, but I do know if it's included in the plan, then all the residents who buy or live there know that that's what they have. And then also they'll know that the fields will be used through 8, 9 o'clock at night. Because I know when I was on the baseball and the soccer boards, that ended up being a huge issue, claiming that they didn't understand that, you know, children would be playing until 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And so if that's set in the beginning, then that means it's easier for those making those decisions down there. The other concern I have is how are we defining residents and percentage of open acreage? 4,000 units, how many do they anticipate living there? I mean, if there's 3 bedrooms, there's obviously more residents. So my concern is that there's not enough reality, even though it's a 10 to 20 year, that if the 4,000 residents create 8 to 12,000 people living there, then putting in 12 acres doesn't meet anybody's requirement. So that's my concern. I understand the more you devote to open space, the less the developer can make money and build, but it's the chicken and the egg. But if you have a set standard, my concern is you need to stick with the standard, which means maybe they go an extra height up. So you have a smaller footprint of the housing, but the housing goes higher. But that has concern for me as a PACS commissioner, is that we do recognize, especially since the pandemic, our residents, and because we have an amazing department that really engages our residents in services, parks, and also knowing how important mental health is. So those are my overall concerns, is to really define how many residents and what is going to be the formula, and then stick to the formula so the residents understand what anticipated. The youth sports organized teams will understand what they can expect. And then then the expectations can be met. And then I believe then the city can dig in with those experts who understand planning fields. Because I know, looking at Friday Night Lights, the flag people, I love how much flag football is being played, but I know their use is different than the next day when you have the soccer, and the ages of the soccer depends on the size. Same with any sort of sports. And also, when you talk about courts, of course, I'm the pickleball queen. How are we going to make sure there's pickleball and basketball? And how are we going to make sure because our city has incredible, mobile types of, multiple type of services. So how are you going to have that? Because they all have to be at open space so that you don't have to close down a street. So those are kind of my questions, and to really think about this as an amazing opportunity, but thinking a little bit more about the reality of how many residents. I know you're already thinking about egress, ingress, how commercial, so that they can walk to, a market and to, dry cleaner and restaurants and things. I really appreciate that. But I just think the reality of how we're planning open space isn't fitting with any formula, either the state or our city's formula. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have a quick question before I turn it over to Commissioner Houston. If I'm hearing this correctly, you're asking our recommendation in terms of what we think should be here in terms of open space at the level of acreage, at the level of use, things like that. Am I understanding that correctly?
So the recommendation for tonight is for me to give you a status update and where we are in the process. There's a little bit more work that needs to be done before I can come back and get your input on the requirements, the amount of open space, what flexibility and levers are suitable for a master developer. So that's something that we are going to go away, still work on once we get the direction from the city council that we can move forward, that we have a project description. We'll then engage with Brian's team so that we're making sure, as a first pass, we're understanding what the needs are, what the park master plan is identifying, and that we're consistent with that. And so hopefully when we come back to you in the spring, we already are anticipating some of your requirements, what your input is going to be, and then we can build from that and really use it to help kind of finalize what's going to be written in the specific plan.
So there will be time in the spring for us to provide concrete recommendations in terms of how we're seeing what's necessary for this kind of development.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Houston.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. That was nice. I am having a little bit of trouble understanding what the difference between, we're talking about a plan is going to be selected, and then we're talking about the master developer having their plan. Can you tell me about what the difference between those two things is?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question because it's very complicated. And so right now what we're doing is picking a preferred plan so we can start environmental review. The purpose of environmental review is so that we can anticipate environmental impacts that are going to be associated with this development. So I try to think of it like this. We're trying to study like worst case scenario. What are the most number of units? Obviously, we know that open space doesn't have a huge environmental impact, and so that's why you're only seeing that minimum of 12 acres for studying purposes. Obviously, we're going to go and then write in open space requirements. Now, this is all a grand balancing act, and of course we have a lot of different priorities. The state's priority is housing. The city council has a priority of housing. They also have a priority of open space and recreational facilities and amenities. So we're trying to balance, in addition to a lot of other priorities, right, from transportation, all the departments. So we're trying to balance all of those in the specific plan, but we're also trying to use a crystal ball to try to anticipate what a master developer might submit. If we underplan, then we risk not being able to accurately mitigate the infrastructure needs. So if we plan for too little of housing, then we're not actually going to be asking and embedding the requirements that we really need to mitigate the number of residents that we have. So that all goes into developing what we anticipate or what we think is going to be in the specific plan. And then of course, when the master developer submits, once the specific plan is done and hopefully adopted and approved, then we will go through an entitlement process and review their applications to ensure that it meets the requirements, the intent of the specific plan, and that we can get it to a point where we feel confident recommending approval to the city council.
Yeah, thanks, that's helpful. So, but I guess I get what you're saying, that the plan that's selected kind of opens the door for that environmental review that we need to sort of look at whatever the master developer is going to come up with. I guess what my question is, so the plan that's selected now, does that set out, I'll call it, for example, we're talking about a range of units that might go in. We're talking about a minimum amount of space. Is that decided now? For example, they're saying, hey, we are going to allow 4,000 units versus we are only going to allow 2,500 units. Is that something that's decided? I mean, are we putting like the restraints on it now at this point, and then the master developer comes in and has to kind of work within those parameters?
So what we're deciding now is used for the environmental purposes. It does not commit the city to that project description. So in future, the city council could decide on a different maximum threshold for housing. We could get your input as we go through this plan and adjust those minimum open space numbers or what is included in meeting that requirement. So this doesn't commit the city right now to what will ultimately be adopted in the specific plan. Okay. Does that help answer the question?
I think so. I think that your focus on the environmental review kind of makes sense, that ultimately we're trying to see what's the largest environmental impact that this development could have, and then from there the decision about what actually happens within the space will come between whatever the master developer suggests and whatever the city approves. Is that kind of fair to say?
Yeah, in an ideal world, planning ideal 101, like we go back and there's no time requirements, you would write your entire specific plan and then you'd study it. But we are on a timeline constraint with the state, with the agreement we have in place. They gave us an extension to the end of 2026. So that is the timeline we have to work with. So we have to do a little bit of consecutive planning here. And that's why they're being done at the same time.
Got it. Thank you.
Vice Chair Wright?
Hi, thanks so much. I was wondering if you could pull up the preferred choice slide while I ask my questions.
Oh, sorry. You going for me? Okay. Okay, here we go. Or did you want the alternatives?
The Planning Commission, yeah, this one. Awesome. So this is what the environmental study will be on. Great. Well, I want to say thank you. I think you did a really good job summarizing all of the different meetings and conversations, and I'm really glad that we are being informed on this project by you. I think since we're not voting on anything or whatever, and for fellow commissioners, I would just view this as like a prelim conversation for us to have amongst ourselves and to be early, stages of education on it, ask you questions. But I'm just really glad we're having this opportunity to do that, because I feel like there has been a lot of external talk, meetings, planning commission meetings, and you're right, like we all definitely have not had the chance to go to all of those meetings, so I thought this was really great, so thank you. I guess I also had questions about the process, as far as how much leverage do you feel that we have when it comes to like the brokerage of the master developer versus the state? Like, do you feel that we have equal weight in that conversation, or not so much?
It's a really good question. It's something that we've been sort of contemplating as this process has evolved. The state is our partner They ultimately own the land. They have written state legislation to give us the opportunity to do the planning. And so we are going to write the requirements in that we feel fits the needs for our city and that we expect the master developer to meet. But I am going to be completely transparent and honest with you. Housing is their priority. It's why they are willing to dispose of the site to a master developer. That will be a requirement for the master developer. And it's why they're willing to work with the city of Costa Mesa and have us lead that planning process. So again, it's going to be a little bit of a balancing act. And once we get a master developer and they're known and they're on board, then we can start having those conversations with them, which is a whole nother process that'll happen after the specific plan about what our expectations are, what we really want. This, I think, is going to be a really exciting time to provide input to, because this is when they're really going to give those grand ideas of what those sports facilities will look like. Is it going to be playgrounds? Is it going to be amenities, libraries, a teen center? Like, what is that actually going to look like? And that will help bring it to life and help us really assess, like, does this meet the intent of the requirement and what we're really seeking, which is to have these recreational uses for our residents and make them publicly accessible.
Yeah. So once we're at that stage, it's sort of just us two as the entities at the table, pretty much?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, cool. And I even heard there might be like sub-developers down the road as well, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So the master developer will typically be a market rate developer, and they'll partner with affordable housing developers. So at that same time, we'll also have affordable housing developers start to reach out to us. They'll have their own clientele and needs and different ways that they work through the entitlement process. The master developer will be bound by a development agreement, and this is also our opportunity to say when these requirements will take place. So, you know, we don't want the open space to be met at year 20. We want things to start being implemented early on in the process and throughout as they continue to build housing. And that holds them to those requirements.
Yeah. Yeah, wow, this is going to be a big few years for you, huh?
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear maybe both in your like professional perspective and if you could just share like previous conversations on how you guys are weighing and addressing like the general plan concerns and like I guess deviations of like the original intent 10 years ago for the FDC versus now, as you just transparently shared, like the state's prioritization of housing. Like, I guess internally as the city planners, how have you guys weighed that? And then how has like Planning Commission weighed that in their decisions?
Yeah, that's a great question. When this process first started and some of these general plan policies were written, we envisioned having 115 acres of the entire site. Now, since that time, we've obviously learned that there's going to be an emergency operations center on the site and that the Department of Developmental Services will be taking up 20 acres. And so this has really narrowed the purview of our specific plan. And so we are trying to balance and consider general plan policies that were maybe written when we had that entire site versus now that being reduced. However, it's pretty clear through our outreach meetings and through the Planning Commission meetings that there is a support and a need for open space. That's probably not surprising to all of you, given what you do. And so we are really trying to push for not just like the size of the spaces, but the quality of the spaces and the amenities that are going to go on there. Because what I've learned in my profession reviewing applications is sometimes it's not as much the amount of open space that's publicly available, but it's really how it is developed and whether there's like active and passive uses that really make people want to go to it and use it. And that's why there's that flexibility in the specific plan so that we can get those grand ideas from a developer and try to assess whether they meet the intent.
Yeah, so when someone is quoting the original general plan open space like dedication, you're saying that included the assumption that we would have all 100 plus acres, but maybe we're like sort of pulling that back because now we have an updated, like reduced scope.
Yeah, but also to clarify, so I would say that was probably the case for the 25%. And originally, when that was written, we were envisioning 500 units on the site. So the number of housing units has evolved as well. But this general plan policy was written citywide. So it doesn't just apply the 4.26 per 1,000 residents. So the Planning Commission was pretty clear in their recommendation that they wanted that requirement to still be in the specific plan. And with these sort of flexible levers to potentially deviate if the master developer can show us how they're going to meet it through these other means of compliance.
Okay, yeah, that's so interesting. Just out of curiosity, what's the height maximum?
Yeah, that's a good question. We don't know yet because that's being developed as part of the specific plan. We do know that there are going to be height requirements. I'm going to go back for you here from the EOC site. And typically, these are ranging like 6 stories, 8 stories. When we were developing land use concepts, the majority of the heights were ranging from anywhere to like 2 to 3 stories up to like 5 or 6 stories. Again, it depends on the developer and their product type and what they're willing to build. Typically, what we find in the industry is that for a wood frame construction, you typically don't see more than 5 or 6 stories because once you exceed that, the cost of building goes out of the water. So it's like, if you're gonna build 7, you might as well build 20. So it's very unusual to see something within that range. We did study as part of one of the land use concepts, a senior housing tower that was, I think, 8 or 9 stories in that range. And that's one of the things we studied that because the public asked for that to be studied and voiced support for having a senior housing product type that had a higher height. And so what we would probably do is, in terms of the specific plan, is identify height maximums, but there might be a couple places in the specific plan where they could exceed that if certain criteria is met.
Cool, that's so interesting. And I am going to get to open space. All these questions are kind of leading to that. I think it's really helpful to know that basically the intention of where we're at right now is just to point to the environmental impact review, right? So it's not saying this is exactly what we want it to be. We're just trying to like cover our bases so that likely it's something under that and we know the impact review will sort of lead the way. Is there like a fiscal component to that too? Like, here's the cost to build all this infrastructure so that a master developer could basically weigh if it's even worth the money? Or do we also share in the costs?
We do not share in the costs unless we decide to through some sort of a development agreement, and there's a reason and a need to do that, which is only in like very unique circumstances, right? It might be affordable housing, we have funds and we want to, use those funds towards a project or something. In this case, you might have impact or in lieu fees for parks fees that you might decide go to something, and so that would be something negotiated in the development agreement. I'm sorry, while I was explaining that, I forgot your question. Could you
basically, like, do you also estimate the fiscal?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Impact in a way to build out all this infrastructure.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. So the state agreement identified a requirement to do a financial feasibility analysis, and we have done that. That was presented to the Planning Commission in the study sessions. At a very high level, 2,300 units is not feasible for a developer. So again, this is us using our crystal ball and what we anticipate is going to happen. The second land use concept was 3,450 units, and it was sort of like on the cuff. It could be feasible if a developer were to come in and make some tweaks to it, and then obviously up to 4,000 is financially feasible under the land use plan that we studied.
I think I saw that actually. So yeah, that's interesting how you have to, weigh all these different stakeholders. Okay, so I'm going to kind of shift to something that our commission has been working on. We've been developing these like values and sort of matrix for for making our feedback more quantifiable and efficient to council. You know, oftentimes we look at stuff like this or CIPs, and then there's not really a way to like make it objective other than like, that's my park in my neighborhood, I want it better. And so we haven't used it yet, but I feel that this is a really good opportunity to try it myself. So I'm gonna try. And here are the top 5 that we identified as like a team. So community-centered planning and engagement, equity and access, sustainability, safety and maintenance, and creativity and innovation. And already what strikes me as like a tough one is like community-centered planning, but for who, right? Like this project, are we trying to build for existing Costa Mesa residents? Or who's part of the community, right? Is it developers too, like that are investing into our city and trying to make projects work for them? Or are we just thinking about the future community and the quality of life of the people that are gonna be living here and participating in the open space in this, you know? And I think that's a tough one for me. I think I have a couple of like qualms about this. It sort of feels like a gated neighborhood when I look at it, like that there's only 2 points of entry. I think it's going to make it hard for anybody to like participate, even if there was a bunch of public open space. But then on the flip side, the only having like 35,000 square feet of commercial space is also going to mean that everyone for any errand who lives here is going to have to drive out at the same time. So it's going to be like, when it comes to community-centered like planning, other than like really good input and feedback and including like the commissions, I think we've done a great job up until that point, but I just feel like it's such a tough one because it's just this like random block of land already sort of at this weird setback off of any major road. So that feels really like non-conforming to any other neighborhood in Costa Mesa. And then so then also like the equity and access one is a tough one for me. The fact that like whatever amazing things we put in here would be quite difficult to access to any of like the surrounding neighborhoods. Like you'd have to basically drive up to the one street to get in. You know, that's like scoring quite low to me. And what strikes me as very interesting, and I know some ideas or vision for this got thrown out there, but the fact that this is basically surrounded by golf course land, I think should be discussed. So now I'm finally getting to open space. I really think we need more open space in the city, and I support more open space. However, it needs to be easily accessible. And if it's basically in like a gated community, I don't feel like that's accessible enough. I more so view the like L-shaped golf course land surrounding the entire FDC as something that, in my opinion, the city should consider converting into public open space. One, for the, you know, thousands of people that are going to be living here. But two, if you look on a map, that entire neighborhood, like this is sort of Upper West Side, College Park, a lot of neighborhoods that don't have park space. And, you know, a golf course, if we're talking about equity, a golf course, in my opinion, is one of the most exclusive land uses that we can have. A very small number of wealthy people use it. And I would love to see people of all kinds, ages, be able to use space like that. So I'm really going outside the box here a little bit, but I do want to say that this was discussed in Planning Commission. So I do think there's precedence for that. But yeah, and then, you know, like sustainability, safety and maintenance, I feel that this is a good example where those values might not be as applicable because we're for kind of, well, sustainability might be actually, but safety and maintenance, I'm kind of like, okay, you know, this is starting from a blank slate. Might not be as relevant as when we're looking at, you know, revitalizing dilapidated playground equipment that's gonna hurt someone, you know. But I'm definitely gonna touch on the creativity and innovation one with this of like, let's think big if possible. And worst case, we're just making recs to city council anyways. So I think I'll just speak personally, like a takeaway is there are practical steps to this process, which is like we're maximizing what this could be for the environmental impact review. We have many stakeholders that need to be considered, mostly the people that are going to make it happen, right? Like the state and the developer, and it needs to make sense for them. But I almost feel like as this commission, we kind of have a responsibility to listen to the open space community members and like really push to think outside the box if possible. And I would like everyone to consider using our matrix and values to sort of back up and give weight to why it's worth, you know, making some risky suggestions. So that is my pitch for open space, collaboration with FDC. Thanks. So nice to meet you.
I have very little to say, actually, because commissioner comments and questions have been so thorough. So I just want to acknowledge all of you. I really appreciate all of this engagement. And thank you again for your presentation. And I really appreciate you taking all the notes, too. I see you writing furiously away, and I appreciate that. I feel really heard up here. I'm not going to repeat everything the vice chair said, but I will say, I see this as a provocation to all of us up here to think, I'd written this down too, to think big and think creatively, all right? And to not be bound by what others may say we should be bound by, that there will be a time in this process where we can contribute our recommendations. And then also to second Vice Chair what you said around thinking about how we apply our values to this. This is an opportunity for us to work with you, city staff, and to have our values serve as a shared document, a shared source of knowledge for us to have a conversation about. And it's also an opportunity for us to talk to all of you and to people in our districts around what we're hearing, what we're seeing, what people's needs are. So I would say, one, it's just a provocation for us to think about this and to begin thinking about our values in a very specific way as it pertains to this development. I would also encourage us to think specifically, right? So it's like, I really appreciate what you said in terms of it's not just about open space, it's about quality space and how it's used. So like one of the things that I'm thinking about is like how much space should be dedicated to recreation? What do I feel like is an appropriate amount? What does a passive use of open space look like? What are other people or what have other people done that I think is creative that we should be considering? The issue of sustainability and also of other creatures. So it's not just the human inhabitants of that area, but it's those who are not going to show up to our meeting, the bat boxes, other things. How can we think about creating this development so that you would want to live there too? It's interesting because you talk about it in terms of a gated community. I want to make sure that there is a high quality of life for people who are living here and that actually it would be a place where I would want to go. And then we have the problem of how am I going to get there and what does parking look like? But that's ideally what I would want, is that there's something really special going on in this development, and it has to do with open space. And oh my gosh, the people at the city were really thinking creatively about it, and maybe it looks different than what we have going on. And so it's not just another park or it's not just acres, but it's like creatively thought. So I don't have anything specific, and this is not the meeting to do that, but it's a provocation. And it might be something maybe we want to think about, you know, there could always be round 2 subcommittee thinking about this, trying to apply our values in a very specific way. Just going to put that out there. We could be thinking about a subcommittee that utilizes our values to think about this project. We could be utilizing our values to think about other CIP projects. So I'm putting that out there for you all to consider. And we can revisit it at a future meeting. Yeah, yes, Commissioner.
I'm so sorry, just something you had said before sparked another question in me is you had mentioned that like based on what residents had said, like on senior housing, so you did a study on it. So when you do study sessions on things like not just that one, but any of the community engagement, and then you do a study session, do you then present that to the planning commission or council? Because I don't have time to watch all the meetings. So when we're getting, public comments or emails saying this isn't what the residents want, is there somewhere we could go back and say, oh, look, we studied it and it can't be done because of this, or that just, yes, basically.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, so we presented to the Planning Commission. We're going to be presenting all of those findings to the City Council, and we have, as we've done outreach. I'll just give you some quick highlights as it relates to open space, what we heard in the outreach. So open space configuration was one of the factors that most influenced a participant in our survey to actually choose a land use concept that they preferred. What they really wanted to see was open space that was dispersed. One of the things they were super favorable was an open promenade and gateway into the neighborhood that really has like sidewalks, and landscaping, trees, that kind of thing that you could walk on that would be more of like a paseo. So that was something that residents said. Let's see, so there's a lot of obviously feedback on housing. I won't mention that for now, but feel free to go back and look at those videos. Really favoring the balance of open space when it comes to like kind of prioritizing either open space or housing, but acknowledging that there is a need for housing too. And then as we looked at the specific plan, and let me try to go back, I'm just pulling up a prior Planning Commission meeting so I can tell you what that feedback was. I think that's pretty much the gist of it. If you want to go to the website too, there's a really helpful document that summarizes. It'll be part of workshop 4, and it'll summarize the survey that we did and the feedback that we got on this. But open space was supported throughout all of the outreach that we did. It has been mentioned every step of the way. And again, the actual need for recreational facilities. In our Planning Commission study sessions, we heard a lot about folks trying to use parks and open space for softball practice, for soccer games, and really not being able to have access to those places just because of the amount of need and the demand. So really wanting those facilities there so that they can access them. I think there was a comment, if I may, through the chair about parking earlier too, so I just wanted to clarify for the group. In terms of parking and lighting, there will be standards in the specific plan, so parking standards for housing, of course, but also there will be parking requirements for open space and recreational facilities. What configuration that might look like, we're not totally sure yet, so it could be on-street parking, it could be dedicated parking lots, it could be a combination of some of those things, but that would be embedded, and then of course lighting too, so that we can make sure that activities can still go even when it gets dark in the winter. So that's the plan. But of course, like, we'll come back and get your input, and we'll get the department's input on that right balance of those things and what is really needed.
Commissioner Dorn Parker.
I have a clarifying question. So if I understand this right, this is all the standards we as a city want to define so that the master builder, I know we have environmental, so we need to think of the largest, most highest impact. So when the master builder comes in and develops a plan that the city wants, they don't have to worry that it'll be under that major impact. That's my understanding, and thank you for clarifying. The clarified question I have for you is the flexibility and the assumption for the city that this master builder and their sub-builders would be the ones having the financial burden to create, like we have the golf course, and there's going to need to be redesigning and all of that. So that is going to be their burden. It won't be the taxpayer's burden necessarily. That's one of the things that will have to be defined. And like you were talking about, the point of inflection between them being able to build what we need, that they as a business is viable, but at the same time, the taxpayers here in California, the state isn't coming in and causing the city to have an undue burden that they've provided because they lowered the size of the footprint. They've lowered the ability of the city to really impact what it's going to look like. So I just want to make sure it's clarified because I've heard a lot of things and I heard bits and pieces that yes, that's going to be the conversations in the future. But the assumption is it will not be a burden of the taxpayers.
Yeah, your assumption is correct. The financial burden would be placed on the master developer to comply with the specific plan and build the entirety of the project and its impacts.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming here tonight and educating us on this. Appreciate it. Do we need to receive and file this? It's been a long day already. Okay. New business number 2, Park Capital Improvement, Park Value Guidelines. Director Gruner, before I hand it over to you, I would just say there are a couple of things on this agenda item. Thank you all for showing up tonight. Appreciate it. We have an updated values. I want to make sure that we heard all of the feedback that you gave. So that's something to keep in mind. And then this is an opportunity to weigh in on the matrix. Director Gruner, I will hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So at the last meeting, the Commission approved the values as they're outlined in the guideline, basically on the attachment number 1. And I just want to make sure that there's no other edits or anything. I know that when we adjourned, the Commission approved the values as is with some edits, and I just want to make sure that has been addressed.
Commissioners Dorn Parker and Vice Chair Wright, if you had the very substantial feedback in terms of details, so if you feel like you were heard. Okay. Okay, thank you both.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, then we can go ahead and move on to attachment number 2, which at the last Commission meeting, it was requested that staff put together an example of some type of metric that can be used to measure each of the different value criterias, whether that's the community-centered and planning engagement portion, equity and access, sustainability, safety and maintenance, and creativity and innovation. So we did that and we put something together for the Commission to take a look at and to provide some feedback to staff. And I will leave it open to discussion.
I'm going to do what we did for the last agenda item and invite if there are any members of the public who would like to weigh in on this agenda item. Let's start with you all before we move to our comments and questions. Is there anyone in the chambers who'd like to comment? Nope. Ms. Fatua, is there anyone on Zoom?
There are no hands currently raised, Chair Brown.
Thank you. Okay, this is our opportunity. Questions, comments, feedback. Vice Chair Wright.
Hey guys, I'm just gonna share my initial reaction is I think this is, sorry, Siri thinks I'm talking to her. I think this is totally adequate for me. I think as far as the weight multipliers, that's what I would change personally, depending on the project, the nature of the project. I feel like in the previous FDC presentation, you guys can hear how I'm gonna be applying this rubric. And I think the benefit is we're all starting from the same place, right? We've all agreed these 5 are relatively important to all of us, and we're gonna do our best to apply like some weighted, quantitative approach to it. I think for me, I could only make this better in just applying it to ongoing processes and projects, and I will likely learn from that. But as far as creating something generic and applicable to all people or projects, I feel like I can work with this. So that's where I'm at on it.
Commissioner Dorn Parker.
Yeah, as with the beginning of what our little task force work within us on the prior one. I think this is, actually, I could tell the staff put in a tremendous amount of effort and really thinking about and giving us examples of, for example, community-centered planning engagement. What does a gun delivery mean? So a rubrics is really critical to have those defined so we understand that. I think this is a wonderful way to begin, and knowing that as we work with it, we'll find out how to define it better. But this was great. I'm very impressed with the staff, so thank you.
Commissioner Ledger.
So is this that like each park has to have a certain score, or?
No, it's not that the park needs to have a certain score, but it's a way to score a park. And then you can, let's say if we have 30 projects, and this gives you some type of guideline, by the scoring system. It's like, okay, well, obviously this one scored higher, so that's probably a higher priority since it had more points or it had more weight.
Okay, thank you. No, that really helps. I was getting angry at this, but now I like it. Thank you.
Maybe I'll just weigh in unless there's, my gut was that this doesn't quite, like, I really appreciated in the last commission meeting, Commissioner, you had very specific feedback in terms of like evaluative rubric that we could use. And this isn't that, right? My gut was that I worried that this would water down the values, right? Because it takes these values that are actually quite expansive and it puts them into, in this case, I'm going to use the word literal boxes. And there's something missing for me. So I will go on record. There's something missing from this. It confines it. I do think the real concern I have, I'm open to using this. I'm open to the process. So if commission feels like this is something we should try, I'm game to try it. The one thing I'm not game with is that I think it totally misunderstands what a foundational value is. A foundational value can't be assigned a 2-point weight. Foundational values means that you don't get to build the house because the foundation isn't built, right? It's there or it's not. So for me, that's at least the subcommittee, and I think that's what the commission voted on. Community-centered planning and engagement, non-negotiable, foundational, house doesn't get built without that foundation, and equity and access. So I think there's a way to change this document to assuage my concerns, and that's the, like, what is the thing in the craw? That's the thing that I can't move forward without addressing, and then I'm game to try this if others are interested in it. Just registering, I do feel a bit boxed in, but that's okay because we have that 2-pager that we can go back to. And this does give us something to work with that helps quantify it. So I don't know, I don't have a concrete suggestion, but I think that for me, maybe values 1 and 2, the foundational, it's not that they get assigned a point, they're like, is it a part of it? And that if it is a part of it, how comprehensive is it or something? It just I feel like it needs a bit more for those. So that's my 2 cents on this matrix, but I'm game to like play with it for a while.
If I can just add to that, I mean, at the last commission meeting, we discussed it as like a working document, right? And it's always going to be in development. It's always going to be changing to make sure it's as good as possible. And I would agree with the commission. I mean, I think there's maybe a good starting point, and then we can always revise it as we were moving forward with, and once you start using it, you start seeing, oh, well, we should include this, or we should remove this, or make a change here. So it's always evolving.
Commissioner, do you want to say? Okay, Commissioner Kamala. My mic's been having issues all night too.
Commissioner Kamala, one moment. Sorry, it's because for Zoom purpose.
There we go. Oh, there we go. All right. I know. Calling Zoom. No, originally when I looked at this, I said, you know what? It's not objective enough. Strong is different for everybody, right? But then, like commissioners, as we talk through it, I realized we're we're all at least looking at the same things, even though we have different ways, different perspectives on it. And I think every project is going to be different. And I think taking a step back, this aligns us at least to say, okay, these are the key things that are important to us. And then we talk through each project and the need of each project, right? The percent of landscape area converted to native plants may be super important on sustainability. And yes, I can quantify that, but is that as important in every single project versus maybe creativity and innovation or equity and access? And to me, obviously, community-centered planning is important. So I like where this is. Director Gruner, to your point, it is 100% a working document. In my head, I'd love to create something that, lasts for 100 years that we keep on using and never touch, but that's not the reality of things. And even what we were discussing before, in our head, love to make Fairview Developmental Center 100% green space with tons of soccer fields. Like, that would be the plan. But the reality of it is that a developer needs to be able to monetize it. The state needs to help us meet our arena target of, I think, 11 or 12,000 housing units by 2029. So there's a lot of different dials that maybe aren't our top priority, and we just kind of have to play ball. So I like where it's going. Thank you for the work you guys put into this, and I think it's a great jump-off point for us.
So I'm curious, we have this living document. What are we going to do with it now? So I guess it's a provocation to us, which is, do we want to have it sitting here and we'll revisit it in the new year with the CIP process? Is there something that we could do before then to begin, flexing how this document is used and how we're thinking about different projects so that we're better prepared for the next year? Commissioner Ledger,
Yeah. Oh, there it goes. Sorry.
I recognize you.
No, what I was thinking is, because I see where you're coming from, but I also see how this could work. That's why I think we just work with it for a year, and then if it works, then we vote to make this what it always is. If that makes sense.
Commissioner Dorn Parker.
Hi. Oh, good. There I am. I guess this was my idea of what we were doing, is to lay the groundwork so when the CIP comes forward, that we now have this living, breathing document and go over this to then begin as projects come before us. And even like today's report, I loved how our vice chair was starting to look at the conversation that we had and some of the priorities that I think everything, as they're asked to look at park designs, but I think the CIP is really where we haven't felt like there's a lot of input. Our staff has been much better at gaining input from us. So I guess that's what understanding and anything and reports that come before us to see if we could practice. And how does this fit our, five priorities? How does the rubrics work? Is it working for what we were thinking? So that's what I'm thinking. It's a year to play and evaluate and practice what we think a tool would be effective to work with.
And practice could begin sooner rather than later too, right? So, practice could be hypothetically utilizing utilizing this values. I'm going to just pick up on what Vice Chair is saying. Utilizing the values document to think about the park assessment. We could also revisit what was presented to us last year in terms of the 5-year CIP and actually look at that in advance of city staff presentation. It's just an opportunity to practice with our values and to think about how does this actually take place. We would have to set aside some time to do that. So putting that out there.
Yeah, and we can certainly do something like that, but just also keep in mind that the CIP projects for 2026 are going to be coming to you guys probably in December, January timeframe. So it's right around the corner. We're going to be utilizing this, and actually applying it to some of the future CIP projects.
And that'll be based upon last year's 5-year CIP project list?
No, it's going to be a little bit different. Obviously we're moving forward, and there was a lot of projects, frozen in this fiscal year. So I would have to check with Public Works and kind of see exactly what they're planning on, bringing forth to the commission.
I think the one thing I'll say is, in light of these values, it would be really helpful for us to see more than less, right? So that we actually see a much longer list. We're seeing what was presented last year for the 5-year, and then also keeping that in mind in terms of the budget impact. But that's really where the values will like hit the road, is that we get to actually in real time decide what do we think makes sense. So advocate for that. Okay. This is a receive and file, or we don't even need that. It's great conversational.
We will actually need a motion to
Okay.
confirm that these are.
It was approved for the,
yes.
okay.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Second.
You may vote on your dais. Motion carries 6-0.
Excellent.
Yay.
Well done, all. Unless there are any other commissioner comments, questions, staff input, Commissioner Ledger, is that a hand or no? Okay. We're going to adjourn this at 7:57 tonight. Thank you all.